Hi, I'm Ken Jacobson, Senior Documentary Programmer, AFI Festivals, and I want to welcome you to AFI Fest 2020, presented by Audi, and to this Q&A for NOTTURNO, directed by Gianfranco Rosi. First, I want to thank our supporters of the festival, our presenting sponsor, Audi, our AFI members, and of course, you, our valued audience. NOTTURNO had its world premiere at this year's Venice International Film Festival and has gone on to play at the Toronto International Film Festival, New York Film Festival, other festivals throughout the world, and it was also scheduled to play in the Telluride Film Festival. We're truly honored to have with us today the film's director. Gianfranco Rosi, born in Asmara, Eritrea, attended university in Italy and graduated from NYU Film School in 1985. His films include Boatman, 1993, Below Sea Level, 2008, Sacro Gra, 2013, and Fire at Sea, 2016. He was awarded the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival for Sacro Gra, the first time ever that a documentary was so honored. He was awarded the Golden Bear for Best Film at the Berlin International Film Festival for Fire at Sea. And Fire at Sea also was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature. Welcome, Gianfranco, and congratulations on this incredible film.
You forgot one of my favorite films, Sicario, Room 164. El Sicario.
That's one of your favorites. I couldn't list them all, and it was really difficult.
No, I know, but that is. I wish I could do now a film like that, because all my films take 3, 4 years, 5 years to make it, and that film was an instant movie. It was like 2 days in a room with a hitman from Mexico, and was like inspired by this incredible man who was my tutor, my mentor, my Charles Bowden, which I think is one of the greatest American writer. Unfortunately, he died 5 years ago. And I think Sicario is really now I say I have to make a film like Sicario. 2 days, boom, done. No budget, nothing. Instead of spending 3 years on board, nothing. So
that's right. And speaking of 3
Sicario
years,
is part of my work. I love that film.
Yeah, well, that's something for our audience to seek out for sure. I want to ask you about NOTTURNO. Of course, that's what we're going to be primarily talking about today. But before we do, I'm guessing that many people who have just seen NOTTURNO at AFI Fest also saw Fire at Sea, which we did screen at AFI Fest 2016. And it's a film that received a lot of acclaim, justifiably so. And so I just want to go back to Fire at Sea for just a second for one question. And as a reminder for folks, Fire at Sea takes place on the island of Lampedusa in Sicily and focuses on, 2 main characters, a 12-year-old boy, Samuel, and a doctor who ran a clinic on the island. And the backdrop of the story, of course, is the European migrant crisis, which directly impacted the island in so many ways. My question, for you is, can you describe your process in approaching and making Fire at Sea and compare it to the process as applied to NOTTURNO?
Yeah, thank you for asking me this question. Nobody did before, but of course, after Fire at Sea, after being for 2 years in this little island and interacting with all the migrants and all this wave of people arriving in that island, and feeling that, in these 2 years, I never was able to interact with the people that somehow survive any war, any conflict there. And they, after struggling and passing, many people died in the Mediterranean. And after arriving into Lampedusa, that was for them a moment of freedom, which somehow most of the time we betrayed that moment of freedom. People arrive here with hope, and unfortunately we are not able to embrace that hope, and to make that life easier. Most of people that they come to Europe, but they don't have an easy life here. So for me, it was like a need after Fire at Sea to be able to cross the water, the Mediterranean Sea, and to see if I could go like closer to what was the impact that war and disaster and conflict created in an area. And Lampedusa is a very tiny, tiny island. Only 4,000 people live there. You can go around Lampedusa in 15 minutes by car, in 1 hour and a half walking, if you're a good walker. And there's not much, it's like a very, very small island, but somehow it's a door of Europe for people approaching, seeking for freedom. So from this tiny spot, I have here a map, which I like to have this map always, because this was my map that I carry with me when I was filming. And you see, so this is a map of the places I visit. This is like this only is Iraq. Then here we have Syria. Here we have Iran. Here we have Kurdistan. That people say is not a state, but for me it should be a state independently. And here we have Lebanon. And here this was the ISIS state. So when I started the film, the crisis with ISIS, these are all the spot that I wanted to visit, the spot that was like the absolute of what it was, the iconic revelation of this conflict in Middle East. And so when I started this film, I suddenly confront myself with an incredible, complicated world, like a complication that started in 1916, where someone designed these borders, sketched this border on a table, where like the colonial power at the time. And since then, what was the Ottoman Empire became structured and stated that somehow never were stated. And when I started my journey, everything was so big and so complicated. I spent it, I think, like 6 months going around without the camera and tried to figure out what was the approach on the film, which kind of, all my movies start with encounter accident. I never write anything on the table. Charles Bowden, my mentor, as I mentioned to you before, the writer and somehow the reference, and we made together at Sicario. He always told me, Gianfranco, you should never write anything that is more than, he used to smoke a lot, so anything that stays in the match of cigarette, this has to be your idea. If you write more than this, you start with a lie. So a match of cigarette has to be where you write the idea of your film. And that's how this film started, by synthesis, by a very core idea of what I wanted to do. And my first idea was I want to make a film that all these borders and all this map and all this structured would become like a mental space, like not anymore a division. And then I wanted to do a film that the war that was already there when I started 3 years ago, the film, ISIS was like somehow going on a defeat. And, but still, I said, I don't want to visit where war happened. And there were already open war when I was there, with the ISIS, we think. And every time I went to the front line, I say, I cannot film this. This is too much and it's too complicated to film. And then I realized that war somehow has a huge echo that goes much, much farther than the place of the conflict itself. So that's where it started the film, to follow all these borders, which tells the story of the daily life of people. And somehow these people are living in a thin, thin line between life and death, between life and destruction, between life and pain, between life and something that is a tragedy of a destiny, that is a betrayal of history also, on that. But I want these borders to become somehow a stratification of stories, of tales. It became like, so the border in the film became the margin of the tales, of the narration. And then this was like this long journey, and I was able to put together 8-9 stories, going from Baghdad to Kurdistan to Syria. And after I had this vision of my encounter, that's when after 8 months I started filming. And you don't know how much important was to not carry with me the camera, because this allowed me to have a very free encounter there. And then getting appointment with these people, I was saying, okay, I'm gonna come back here in 2 months, I'm gonna come back here in 8 months, I'm gonna come back here in 1 year. And when these people saw me coming back to them, I said, okay, you were serious there. You really want to show our life. And then they opened completely their houses. I was there, I was living there, because in my work, what is important is time. It's time and spending time together. And only when I know, when I'm immersed in the daily life of the people I'm filming, or I want to film, I would love to film, or I want to tell the story with them, then when I'm able to put the camera, and when I put the camera, something tragic happened. Things change suddenly, you know, things become something else. You know, sometimes people tell me, we never see your camera, we never see, how do you do that? Is this fiction, is not fiction? Are you writing, are you staging, are you? I spend a lot of time there. Time is my own investment. This film was 3 years of time that I spent in this area. And only with time you're able to engage this relationship, which is mostly trust, you know. But then you cannot feel everything, you know. You have to be able to create a synthesis. You have to be able to create a core. Again, this little moment, the core of a story. You cannot say the life of each of us is so complicated, but as a good photographer is able with one frame to synthesize with the expression of things. If the photographer knows the subject, he's able to, in one frame, to tell what was before and what was after that frame, you know? So for me, this is always a challenge to find a story and subtract, so take out information, and then able to grab that moment that is universal, that moment that becomes almost like an archetype, that moment that becomes where people can identify, you know, when people can be carry on. And I gave my story to this encounter, basically, to this moment, to this fragment. And on the editing was extremely complicated to go from a story in Iraq to a story in Kurdistan to a story in Syria to another story in Lebanon to another story at the border where there was like 3 million people died. So I tried to get rid of all the information that history is invading us with, and give the space of the memory to the people, you know, because if you think about every single story is about memory, is about something, or either people, when they talk, they recall about the past, and the pain is still there. And when they don't talk, like two of the people that are there, they are the 200, the little kid, and the son that he takes us in this world, was all lit by the fire of the petrol, you know, lamp, and we are in this marshland, in this mysterious place, and that place becomes suddenly a revelation, you know, for me. It's like the world upside down, the echo of the world constantly there, the echo of the shooting, and this guy doesn't do anything. He waits. But I think in this ways there's a little bit of hope sometimes.
I had the feeling that maybe his predilection for waiting mirrors your own as a filmmaker, waiting for the precise light and precise
that's what it means,
like something you do in your
true
work.
Because that's what it is, you know. When I look at something, I cannot be detached from that, and I create my own story in the mind, you know. My story starts when I put the eye on the viewfinder and the weight of the camera. I want to film with the camera that Flaherty used to film with, like 50 kilo camera that you put it there and you don't move it. And within this frame, something has to happen. And of course, I love to use, for me, it's always a challenge, it's both and below sea level, to use the language of cinema. And not only the language of cinema, but also the rigorousness of cinema rules, you know, but with always the awareness that in front of you, there is a reality, there's a person, and there is the weight of a documentary in front. So I like always to push this more and more and more and more, you know, this to break this line, this fine line between fiction and documentary, and in between is cinema. There is cinema in between, and in between there is true or false. This is what it is about, you know, like any. I don't believe in observational cinema. I don't believe in what observing, what you make always a choice, you know, where you put your frame. You know, sometimes people say, but your film is too beautiful, it's too things, but where there are conflict, lights is part of us, you know, and so you choose the right light to tell a story. Light is a very important moment for me. Framing, light, sound, structuring a story when you film, you know, has to be a beginning, middle, and end, that thing. And I don't move that frame till I don't have that moment there. And transformation always for me is very important, you know, to transform what I see in something else, because I don't think we need information anymore in our area. You know, in 2 seconds you can go there and you know everything you want to know. So I think documentary right now has to go somewhere else. You know, has to transport on a more emotional level, on a level that is more like. I don't say that my field is poetic, but if I say a difference like between poetry and an essay, poetry has a lot of space. You know, every word to another word, you can create enormous bridges and enormous interpretation, and that's what I want to do. You know, to create I want to think that the audience is there and is running this journey with me together, and slowly arrive at the end. And at the end, you have more answer than if each person was answering me a question, you know. So I don't want to ask question, I don't want to give answer, but I want that the audience with me in this journey, and I'm sure there are answer in this film, you know. Only if not before, with the face of Ali at the end of the film.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about Ali. That was going to be my next
that moment there.
Yeah,
Or
tell
the
us a bit
faces
about him.
of the clinics, you know, that's moment when you have the first close-up. I never use close-ups in my film, but this time I needed to have the close-ups. Yeah.
Yeah, you seem
I'm
you
not
do
talking too
seem
much.
particularly drawn to young people, to children. You seem to have, to use your own word, you know, encounters with them that evoke the fullness of their lives and their imaginations and their realities. So can you tell us a bit about what drew you to Ali and his family? And also, I'd be curious to hear more about the scene you shot with the children who are talking about their trauma and then drawing pictures to, you know, show what they've been through. And for that one, I would also add, you know, that's one of the few times I think in the film where the last scene is he's kind of showing you.
Yeah, yeah. You gave me three stuff for the first.
I loaded you up with a lot there.
Loaded me up.
So maybe just start with Ali and then talk about the scene with the children.
Ali, he lives in this the poorest town in Middle East, which is called Arida, and is at the border between Lebanon and Syria. That was one of my places at the beginning of my search. You know, you start having a map where you can not go anywhere. And so Arida was one. Arida and Tripoli, the city in Lebanon, where there's a love story. So that became, Tripoli is also a very important place because Tripoli is like the synthesis of what's happening in Middle East. There's this, where the horse is in the film, the horse scene, this is called Syria Road. And that divides two very strong section of what is the world of Middle East, you know, or in Syria and things. So Arida, when I was, people told me you have to go to Tripoli because that's where you understand Middle East, and that's what I understood Middle East, and that's also where I was able to film a love story, paradoxically, in a place of war, where the war is really far away, constantly fighting is the more incredible love story, you know, when the wife and the husband, they smoke nargile there in the terrace. You hear the fighting in the background, and then the rain. This most beautiful dialogue of love, I think. It reminds me of a scene of Satyajit Ray movie, you know. And then suddenly this boy, this man, he puts on his on white things and goes in the street to chant Allah verses, which are very beautiful, and to wake up people for the night and go for the prayer. So there's also a very strong element of religious and also of politics there. But so that was the place where I was searching. And when I met Ali, it was a hunting season, and it was interesting. You know, always gone, the hunting season. And I went there with my producer in Lebanon, with Sabina. Very important. I was able to do this film because I had incredible producer in every places I went, an incredible assistant, because we're only two people always, not more than two. Me doing camera, sound, and everything, and then an assistant, which was a driver, interpreter, and companionship and trust, incredible trust, you know, because you give your life to someone for 3 years, go from place to place. And when I was there, suddenly I meet these the kids there. They just in this road, and for one day they do the work of what dog does to take the bird and bring it back. That's what they do for $2-3 a day. And I meet this face, Ali, and I start looking at him. There's this moment of silence, this moment of where, and I start talking. He doesn't talk. But then with my producer, we're able to go into his house. We spent time there, and I wanted to tell this story here. And then I discovered he's also a fisherman, and he's also a hunter himself. He brings food to the family. So this for me was an incredible encounter. And when I started filming him, which was very, very difficult, because I didn't talk to him, he didn't talk to me, he never talked. You know? So this is going to be a mute story. But when I was looking at him, I say, every single moment I see his face, there is so much. Am I going to be able to have him telling me something at a certain point? I didn't succeed there, because every time I put him in front of the camera, he just had this. But in this silence, I think he reveals more than 100 words or 1,000 of words, and asking and answering to questions. And at the end, when I chose to give the weight of the film to him, he's like a 13 years old boy. And after all this journey, the film ends with his face. And I asked myself, is it right to finish this there? But I say yes. I think now is yes, because in that moment, there's an incredible sense of a future that is suspended. And this is what we are living everybody. Now, transversal, in the world, we live a moment of a future that is suspended. We are just experimenting this now. He was born with that. So that's what I want people to think, you know. So if you were able to go through the movie, through the thing, and you searching for question, for answer, that's the moment where the answer is coming to you, because in that phase you see and you ask yourself, is it hope? Is it dark future? What it is this? I think it's not even hope, it's not in it, but it's a sense of suspension, you know, a suspended future. And I realized this because I was editing during the lockdown in Italy. We had 3 months of lockdown. Mm-hmm. And suddenly, for the first time in this lockdown, they were feeling that experience when I was there, the fear, you know, our houses, our studios became the safe place, the border between life and danger outside. You know, people don't go anymore out. Everybody was wearing masks. Also in the film, there's a scene where people are wearing masks, but because they're wearing masks because they're defending from the attack of the police. You know, when all the revolution is happening, it was killed by this virus also. ISIS is coming up now again from this virus. You know, what's happening in the Middle East now is tragic, because this moment of suspension of politics, of things, of communication is making again all strong again. In Iraq, ISIS is growing enormously. In Syria is growing enormously. Conflict are there. We don't talk about it. We abandon that, you know, completely. And so that's why I wanted to finish the film in this close-up of these kids. And talking about kids again, the story of that room. For me, that room is the room of memory. Is the room where there's only witness in the tragic consequence that ISIS brought to the Yazidi community, to Kurdistan, to 6,000 women were raped. That room became for me a confessional of where history has a witness through the voice of the kids. It's almost a Norimberga, you know, like through this drawing. This drawing are the only images that exist about this, what happened to the Yazidi people. And I was not able to film. I spent 1 month in this place, place where kids, they lost everything. They lost their life, they lost parents, they lost mothers, and it's an orphanage. And I was not able to film them. I spent 1 month there. I was talking, I was staying, and the back and forth, go back and forth, back and forth. Then suddenly one day I meet this teacher, and she was like giving therapy. And she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Today we have the class of drawing, and this is a therapeutic thing." And I started looking at this, and I said, "Can I film that?" He said, "Yes, you can film that." And I filmed every single kid separately, when they were drawing, when they were doing then the class, then the thing, then the encounter with the teacher. To that scene that lasts 5 minutes in the film, it took me like a month of shooting. That could be a movie in its own. And then deciding to put that part was very hard, you know, for me to put that part of the pain. But then I say, if I don't put this in the movie, I'm betrayed in the trust they gave me. And so I decided. So the whole editing somehow was to arrive to that point where the class is there suddenly out of the blue, and after that, there is an ISIS prisoner in Kurdistan, which was another incredible encounter that I had. So just to say that the film really grew like day by day, moment by moment, fragment by fragment. I never had an idea of resolution of all these stories, but I knew that in the editing we will find a solution to structuring this in a film. You know, I don't want to call this it's a film for me. It's a film made by encounter. It's a documentary. It's although I don't give answer, but I hope people can relate to this journey and to the moment where I was able to meet all these people that I met in this really last year.
Well, we're unfortunately out of time, but I want to thank you so much. One thing you've done is created some incredibly memorable encounters between the possibilities of cinema and the audience. And, you know, I want to commend you on a film that doesn't necessarily speak or try to provide answers, but merely ask questions in the most profound and beautiful and terrible way that is possible. So,
and I would love that with this film, each person is going to have his own answer, you know, no matter what. Because for me, this is an act of love toward that region that he went through incredible conflict. So I hope that this can arrive to the audience.
And I would just add one last thing, which I think it's only fitting that night seems to have fallen in Rome behind you as we were having this conversation. So with that, I wish you
Notturno in Rome.
Yes. Perfect. So thank you so much, Gianfranco. Congratulations. I want to just urge our audience.
Where do you live? In Los Angeles, I think.
I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area.
San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah. Please do, to our audience, please do talk about this film on social media and check out the rest of our lineup on our website. And thanks again, Gianfranco.
Thank you to you. It was a beautiful conversation. Thank you. Ciao.